Welcome back, Clone Club. We're breaking down Season 5, Episode 6, Manacled Slim Wrists. I'm Will Link, and I am extremely happy to have back with us today
Megan Salinas, how you guys doing?
I am so glad. I was just telling Megan that even though I know everything I said made sense last week, you feel like an idiot just blabbering by yourself. I'm glad to have an actual conversation about this again.
I've definitely done that before, and it's a lot harder than people think.
Yeah. Okay, here's the thing. I want to get this out of the way before we start.
Go for it.
Each episode that we've done back in the day and currently
Throughout the course of our career covering this show,
we would always go clone by clone and break it down. That was always an easy way to do it. And I would write in my notes, I would just write the names of all the clones, and then I would
a little
put
less
in...
so for this episode, huh?
This was a very tough one to keep notes for because, and I think this is going to be the way it goes as we get through the endgame, stories are crossing over in ways that they used to not. You could always used to count on, everybody kind of had their own little storyline going on. Now everything's crossing over, so my notes are a mess. I can't read these. I have to, for the last 4 episodes, figure out a new way to take notes.
Have you had any luck?
We'll
see.
We'll see if this works out. But we only have 4 more of these to go after the one we're about to talk about. And
only 4?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And this one, I'm glad we got a Krystal episode.
Yes.
And I'm also glad that Krystal has reached 50,000 subscribers on her YouTube channel.
Which, I was confused with that video that they were showing Art and Scott at the very beginning of the episode. Yeah. Do they render and upload that shit?
I believe they do.
As is? Why would they do that? Because she clearly took the time to do the jump cut editing thing. Why? It'd be one thing if she just saved it as a file and sent it to herself so she could pull it up on her phone. That to me makes sense. But knowing Krystal, she actually rendered and uploaded it.
I'm gonna have Krystal.
Why?
I'm gonna have Krystal upload our videos. Actually,
I mean to reach her 50,000 subscribers.
But it's her and her friend Bree, and Bree was poisoned by big
makeup,
big cosmetics.
Yep.
They are taking. They are upset with Krystal because she knows what's going on and she's going to expose them.
Can I make a side note? Just this isn't to do with the episode necessarily, but when I was watching it in my living room with my roommate who doesn't watch Orphan Black. And so I was explaining a little bit about Krystal and why we love Krystal to the extent that we do. I used my metaphor of she's on the right track, but not on race day. And as the episode went on, she, at some point, apropos of nothing, my roommate went, I freaking love this girl.
She's great.
She's not going to start watching Orphan Black, but she's like, I freaking love Krystal.
Well,
she's amazing.
I believe there should be a spin-off in which Krystal just works as an undercover spy.
I want her to solve mysteries. I want her to solve every mystery there's ever been. Or more specifically, I want her to give me the Krystal version of every mystery that's ever been.
But here's the thing, as always, Krystal stumbles ass backwards into something that's really going on. That Dyad is acquiring cosmetic companies, and I don't know how big a play that's going to be for the rest of the season, but clearly it shows Dyad...
But big enough to have everybody involved in it this episode.
And we're also dealing with, people who have, at least on the caster end of things, which Westmoreland didn't necessarily seem against, would test on just people out in society. So, who is to say they won't just start putting weird chemicals in your lipstick now, and all of a sudden, your lips fall off.
Yeah.
And you can never have children.
You start losing your hair. I mean, that is Cody's big thing was eugenics. Was basically sterilizing portions of the population so that their genetic material couldn't continue. so that the better genes could go on, and this cosmetic play could very well go into that, since all of the caster clones are dead, except Ira.
So, like I said, with 4 episodes to go, I don't think big cosmetic is going to play a big thing, but it just shows, it's a nice little way to show part of the bigger picture of what Dyad is thinking. And it does it in a fun way, Blue Zone Cosmetics. And let's break down the Krystal story first, because it's fun and it's a little easier to wrap your head around before we get this.
I love it so much.
Yeah. So basically, Krystal comes to Art and Scott.
Because her friend has been poisoned.
Her hair is falling out.
What's so confusing about understanding that?
And it all leads back to this guy, Len, who...
totally ghosted her, guys. He's like the worst.
Nobody ghosts Krystal.
Hashtag truth.
And for good reason, because if you do, Krystal will kick you in the balls.
She's gonna kick you in the balls and make make it so your beard can never grow back.
So basically, it almost... we're laughing a lot at the beginning of this, because it almost doesn't matter why Krystal was going undercover. It's like she wanted to know what was going on with Dyad, later what was going on with this cream, so...
I love that, Art and company basically have to humor her with, Sarah's an operative, you're an operative, we need you to do this. They basically have to humor her in order to allow her to stumble into the right answers. It's kind of amazing.
So early on in, while we're finding all this out, it looks like Sarah is going to go undercover for Krystal.
Which is always fun, too, because Sarah does a pretty great Krystal impression.
And when she does it with Kira, who also loves Krystal.
It's so cute.
However, I was immediately a little disappointed, because I'm like, no, I need to see Krystal in action.
Well, lucky you, we get lots of Krystal in action in this episode.
After Krystal gets Bree to distract Scott by having him help her take her sweater off, Krystal decides to go back. She's running point on this. Sarah and Art are going to be back up. The whole sequence of when she's setting up the camera, and she's even has her own spy equipment. She's got her own earpiece.
She's got an earpiece. She sets up a camera and sends Art basically the token to get into her phone so they can watch the live feed of what's going on. Which it's actually impressive.
It's pretty impressive. Of course, the second the attractive Len comes over, Krystal is all about it. Now, I'm sure all of you know out there that Len is played by Tom Cullen, Tatiana Maslany's real-life boyfriend. So it's kind of, in one of the more comical storylines we're going to get this season, it's great to see that there was this extra, meta layer to it, that he comes in. By the way,
she just can't control herself. She just starts making out with him.
And he's the biggest douche, too.
He's so
he comes
terrible.
in. I feel bad because I don't really, I'm not really familiar with Tom Cullen's filmography.
Oh, I have no idea.
I'm assuming, I know he's Welsh. And I
didn't know they were dating until somebody pointed it out to us on Twitter.
There you go. I'm not really too sure about what he's done. This is the first time I think I've seen him act, and you could tell he's having a really good time just being on here, and it's a fun shout out to the Clone Club that it's Tatiana's boyfriend. It's fun that she kicked her boyfriend in the balls. So, Krystal, here's what's great about Krystal. We were talking in the past about how some of these people are better going undercover than others. Like Cosima, and maybe I was talking about this last week, Cosima is almost too honest. Mm-hmm. She can never really do the things that Sarah or the other women do because she wears her heart on her sleeve. Krystal doesn't necessarily wear her heart on her sleeve, but she is all about the direct approach.
Yes. She's just they're no, find a way to steer the conversation back towards Dyad. She's so why is Dyad buying your company? And they're like, what?
And he's immediately bothered by it. It takes him how do you know this? What do you know's going on?
I want to know what the insider information for the beauty industry is like. What is the interior of that world like?
But there's an extra layer to even this, because not only now does she start to find out what's going on with Blue Zone and Dyad, but now she also finds out that the reason Bree's hair was falling out was because she stole, because she's a klepto.
A total klepto, Will. Oh my god. If we're going to talk about Krystal, you need to talk like Krystal. Okay?
I don't know if I could talk like Krystal.
I'd love to hear you try. But anyway.
Maybe if the right phrase comes up, I'll be able to try to channel my inner Krystal.
Everyone should channel their inner Krystal. But her friend is allergic to it because
it's an experimental cream, part of their work with, I guess, Dyad in regenerative therapy.
That one gene that they basically isolated in.
Lin 28A?
Yeah, that one.
Let me tell you what. In the previously on Orphan Black, they said Lin 28A 500 times. I have also written it down because I'm paranoid about forgetting Lin 28A.
Like I just did.
But believe me, it's only because I wrote down Lin 28A.
But yeah, it seems like it doesn't really have much to do with that.
No,
per se.
I mean,
and more to do with just Dyad sort of being shady.
As I talk about the Krystal storyline, and maybe this is another reason my notes are a mess this week. As I talk about the Krystal storyline, you start to realize it's kind of a red herring storyline.
Yeah.
It's more of a showcase for us to see Krystal. It's also a good counterbalance because the other stuff, once we get to the stuff going on the island,
it's pretty heavy duty.
Yeah. And this kind of served as a fun little, reminder that this show can be funny. This show could be a really good time.
Very funny. The show is fantastic. I'm going to miss it so much.
So she basically is informed that this cream is what made Bree start to lose her hair. And then he finds the cream in Bree's little makeup bag, because Bree leaves her shit all over the apartment.
And she's got 12 different little flower makeup bags.
And he confronts her on it, and Krystal she takes the earpiece out. She doesn't want to hear from Sarah and Art. She just comes in and takes him down, which we saw last season that she's tough. She's been taking those classes. She can, other than Helena, she might be the most physically fit and tough clone to fight anyone.
Again, probably potentially even more dangerous than Helena, because everybody knows to steer clear of Helena. Krystal will surprise you because no one expects anything from her because she's just the makeup person.
Well, there's the theme on the show that they're always underestimating the lead Sestras.
Exactly.
And Krystal, I mean, it's not fair to dismiss her, but you also understand why she's dismissed, because, what's the analogy you used?
She's on the right track, but not on race day.
Yes. And so it's easy not to, take her totally seriously. I can't do it, Krystal.
Totally seriously. What is so hard about that? Well, what is so hard about that?
So she basically gets him to confess about the experimental creams, all stuff. She rubs it in his beard. He runs out.
No, my beautiful beard.
I mean, it almost feels like this episode was a gift to Tatiana Maslany of, you want to have fun and act in a funny scene with your boyfriend. It almost feels like that. And I mean, I think that's the last we see of Krystal in the episode. She sends Len running out, and that's that with that.
Don't mess with Krystal, I think, is the takeaway.
Here's my big question to that, though. I feel like they're giving a lot of like little curtain calls. Like I feel like that Allison episode, even though I know we will see her before the season ends, felt like her
the
kind
next
of
episode, in fact, yeah.
it feels like her kind of like her big goodbye episode. So is this Krystal's big goodbye, you think, for the series? I mean, we might see her again in the last episode, like with other Sestras, but
I feel like you're onto something there. I feel like the last episode is going to go around to each and every Sestra that's still around, and like we're going to get their little happy ending, whether it's a big dinner, whether it's a big dance scene, whether it's just them going their separate ways and leading their own lives, like, and just getting little vignettes of all of them getting their happy endings. Whatever. I think we'll see Krystal in that, but I think you're right about this sort of being Krystal's last big show.
Yeah.
As this episode is her. I don't want to call it a swan song because that doesn't seem to be the right term.
But it is Lita.
But now it's a pun too. Oh, I'm so upset. How dare you? But yeah, I feel like this could very well be Krystal's goodbye episode, or quote unquote goodbye episode.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna get a Helena one real soon too, as well.
She's got to have her babies.
Yes. Yes, I have some thoughts on that.
Given the pace the season has been going, I feel like we're probably not going to get that until the very end of the season. And maybe it's too early to be talking about this because predictions and whatnot.
Yeah.
But given that we only have 4 episodes left and those kids still haven't shown up, I'm calling it last episode. She gives birth and everyone's at the hospital together, and that's the big swelling ending.
Well, you know what? You know what's funny? The one clone that in the last 2 episodes we've gotten the most of is Cosima. The Cosima episodes have been heavy. Last week she talked about her backstory a little bit.
Parents, yeah.
This week there was also a lot of her on the island, or maybe it just felt like a lot of her because we were on the island so much.
I saw you tweeting about her tux, by the way, and now that I've seen the episode, I loved it.
Right? I mean, that's a great look.
She rocked it.
It's interesting that going into the final episodes, it makes sense. Obviously, Sarah is going to be extremely important, and Rachel. But it makes sense that other than Sarah, Cosima would be the big clone we'd be concentrating on because 1, she'd been sick for so long. 2, she's the one with the scientific mind who can heal them all.
Yeah.
There's a theme of this one. I mean, multiple times in this episode, Susan argues both to PT, you gotta let Cosima out because she knows the science best, and then later to Ira, the only one who can save you is locked in the basement. They know she is... There's this acknowledgement almost like she is the greater scientific mind than Susan or Cody or even PT. It's just
because she can elevate the science, yeah.
She understands the science better. I mean, she doesn't have maybe the experience they have.
They have the years of experience, but she has the insight to build off of that.
You felt like Susan was really, last season, mothering Cosima in a way. Like you could tell she enjoyed working with Cosima. She was excited to work with Cosima much more than her own daughter Rachel, who's a giant pain in the ass.
I counterpoint. Good job on that, Mom. Like, you can't abandon your kid for most of her life and then be really annoyed about the way she turned out. Like, you don't get to be that person. I'm sorry.
I do think you get to feel maybe my daughter shouldn't stab me, though. That's my guess.
That's fair. And also, like, you also very much get the sense that she didn't exactly have a choice in the matter. So, like, I don't know. If she played it up like, I love you, and, like, I should have never let them take you away from me, whatever. Like, I feel like there are definitely ways Susan could have played up their relationship so that, I don't know, it wouldn't have gotten to this point. But that's just me. Hindsight's 20/20.
Well, clearly there are a lot of problems going on this island. And let's get to the island, because I also feel like this was kind of a swan song, certainly for Susan, but I think for the island as a whole and how it's going to play in the remaining episodes of the series. So Cosima is locked in a cage where we saw her.
Did they ever take that corpse out?
I didn't see the corpse in there, so
I didn't see the corpse in there, but we also didn't get a whole lot of angles of the cell, and they also didn't seem to make like cleaning the cell a priority in the past. So I'm like, did PT just shoot that guy and then like lock Cosima in there with the dead body? Because that's pretty messed up.
Well, Cosima wants out, and Mud, of course, is there, and Mud has been nice to Cosima. They've gotten along, but Mud is wearing a cowbell. Mud is...
For some reason,
she's
what a
punishing
weirdo.
herself. But we also got Mud's backstory this episode.
We did.
I saw someone, I think, tweet, the second Mud said she was from Seattle, I knew her backstory was she was going to be a junkie. By the way, I don't know, I know you weren't here last week, but it turns out the actress who plays Mud is 28 years old.
Oh, shoot, she's my age?
Yep.
But she's got a baby face. She looks like such a baby.
You know?
But she's just a baby.
That's what, you know.
But it's good to know that there's a number there.
Yes. So,
she looks like we pointed this out last time that she looks like she could play anywhere from 14 to 30, right?
But you know what? Yes. Now, you know what, though? It makes sense she's a junkie because, you know, once again, this is a cult. PT's started a cult. He's the Charlie Manson of this thing.
Yeah. It also makes sense, you know, even her name, Mud. Like, if she's a former junkie, like, it makes sense that she thinks of herself as dirt.
Well, and who are the people that you're going to... Who's the people that PT's gotten to this island to follow him? It's going to be people who are hurting, in pain, a former junkie. These people, these desperate people in search of cures for disease. Yeah. Those are the people, because
they can take advantage of.
Yeah, they have nothing left to lose, so PT has brought them in. So Mud is still not going to let Cosima out, even though Cosima does the whole play of that they are going to take this little girl. They are going to take this little girl's eggs. They are going to put them in other women. They're basically going to start this whole horrific process, which Lita was basically born from, over again. And use these women's bodies.
And harvesting the eggs of a little girl. That's,
yes.
Like, real gross.
To that end, maybe we'll quickly talk about Kira. Kira pulling a Ferris Bueller's Day Off in this episode. Faking being sick so she doesn't have to go to Dyad. Which I guess that makes Rachel Ed Rooney in this scenario.
Like, I know she's not sick, she's just playing hooky, and I'm gonna catch her.
But they go as far as to give Kira epitaph. Is that how you say it?
An epitaph? Like a nick...
No, the...
Oh, that. I have no idea.
I think it's epitaph.
Yeah, whatever it is, it makes her sick and throw up.
Yeah, so she did that. Why didn't Ferris think of that back in the movie, by the way? Just down some of that. But... Anyway, she pukes on Simon's shoes. She is not brought in to Dyad. Because of that, she gets out of it. She gets out of going to Dyad.
I like that they're playing with, like, Kira being let in on all the grown-up stuff now. Because I like that she can play along now, too. She's like, no, I want to go to Dyad. And then, like, to try to at least make it seem like it's not a ploy.
And she's come up with all this, like, interesting code system.
I love it.
In the stories, so then she could tell Sarah, or she could say these things around Rachel, and Rachel wouldn't know what she's talking about. It's real. Again, they're teaching her the family trade of grifting.
She wants to know how to hustle. Mrs. S wasn't happy about that.
The other thing is, while they're all talking about their plan, and this is something we talked about last week, it turned out, and I want your opinion on this, it turned out Delphine was not the source that led him to Cody. It turned out there was another source. Now, last week I speculated that other source would be Ferdinand, Because who knew where Cody was, and who is somebody Sarah would not be happy to hear they were working with? That was my speculation. He also hates Neos. He probably blames Neos now for brainwashing,
Rachel, yeah.
So what, I mean, agree, disagree, or do you think there's another crazy option of who her source could be?
I think Ferdinand seems like the most likely, given everything that's going on. I'm trying to think if there's anybody out there who's not dead who would know what happened to Cody. The only other people I can think of, Gracie, but like, why would they have any information? Like, I'm trying to think of, again, like, players that are still out there that aren't dead yet.
It's possible Mark could have known what happened to Cody, which then means Gracie would have known.
I think you're right to assume Ferdinand, but I'm also willing to entertain a few other options, although I can't think of the players that are left on the field who Sarah would be outright upset about getting involved. And Ferdinand seems to be the only one.
Speaking of S's sources and information, and my God, we haven't even gotten to a lot of the island stuff yet.
No.
But speaking of her sources and information, one thing I think was disappointing in this episode is we know she got the information that connected Blue Zone and Dyad came from the work Delphine, Felix, and Adele are doing.
Off screen.
Yeah. I said in our very first episode I was worried Felix will get shortchanged, and he really is this season. I am sure, though, in the next 2 episodes, we're going to get a big Felix episode, because for the same reason we got a Krystal and an Allison, I think we're going to give Felix his kind of big farewell episode.
And he's got an art show coming up.
He does. So, but I'm a little disappointed that a lot of this Felix action is taking place off screen, but I'm hoping we get, and I saw Jordan Gavaris tweet that his favorite episode this season was episode 8, which makes me think that's going to be the Felix-centric episode. So we will see. I want him and Delphine skiing down the Swiss Alps.
Oh my God! Yes, yes. While escaping from international terrorists who are also on skis.
Yes.
Yes.
So back to the island.
Or you mean the smoldering wreckage of the island?
The whole time I was thinking about the island, I kept thinking about your favorite show, Lost, and we have to go back. We have to go back to the island,
we don't.
Megan.
That is
right
not
now.
At all necessary.
Well, we do, because it's a recap, so we have to. So
this show's gonna give me an ulcer.
There was a scene in which Susan and PT basically, it's. I love the show. I think it's a smartly written show. I feel like this scene was one of the clunkiest they have had in the history of the show. There's a scene where Susan and PT are arguing, and it's very clunky in its exposition, but it's kind of the one that lays out, here's what our history, and I get why they do it, because we don't want to spend a lot of time with these people. We want to spend time with the Sestras.
Yeah, there's not a ton of time, but I agree. I actually think most of the island stuff was really clunky. It never, maybe it was because we were always looking at it from Cosima's point of view, but, I never felt like they were a real community. I never really got the sense of, what it was like in the day-to-day there, because, again, our focus was Cosima feeling really out of place and just wanting answers and nobody giving that. So I really don't give a crap about the community when it starts falling apart.
Well, you know what's funny? That's interesting. I wonder if, it's a 10-episode season and you got to get into the end game. But I wonder if you had, if it was a 12 or 13 episode season, if we would have gotten to know some of the people in this community a little bit more.
And again, I had a big problem with, it also seemed really inconsistent as to who knew what, because some people clearly knew that they were experimenting on people, and that guy was the one that was running around and, attacking other people, whereas other people are they're no, it's just a bear. don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to, even though we're here specifically to find answers to questions we don't like to. I have a problem with, and I also have a problem with the way, like, PT really came down on Cosima for snooping around, because he basically had a conversation with her of, like, you need to keep looking for answers.
Well,
and then she's like, I found this thing, and he's like, how dare you go looking for answers?
Well, I think a lot of it, though, I think a lot of that, much like with megalomaniacal cult leaders, which PT is,
it's all about that manipulation.
well, and it's, yeah, one, he's trying to manipulate, and two, they don't want to be called out. They don't want to be undermined. And I think Cosima's biggest sin there was at the dinner party in the episode before, when she basically calls him out on, you didn't know Darwin because you're not like 170 years old. And I think at that point, Cosima's dead to him, because anything that, like anyone, again, bringing back to like Manson, because, you might as well go with the greatest cult leader of them all. Anyone who would, like, threaten his power or something had to be, like, dealt with. So I think it's the same thing. And again, maybe it's a little rushed because we're getting to the end game here.
That's true.
But I mean, that's. But
I'm just saying it's a little clunky.
Well,
I really wish I had been here last week, because the reveal that Cosima did find out, you're not actually 170. Like, that's BS. This is you as a young man with Susan. I loved that, and I love that we get that, like, as the official, like, thing. He is a charlatan, like we had been theorizing from the get-go.
Yeah.
So I really wish I had been here last week, so we could be like, yes!
Yeah.
We knew it! We called it!
The first scene with Susan and PT in this episode was definitely clunky, definitely expository, and I feel like it was hammering home things that, like you just said, we found out last week. But then again, considering Susan dies in this episode, it also
makes sense.
Gave us a lot of Susan, because in that scene we find out about, like, they came together in 1962, but because, she was a woman, she couldn't really have a lot of power, and that's when PT developed this myth. She calls him John, so I guess his real name is John, not Percival or whatever. And we also find out that Susan always had these higher ideals, and that makes sense. Like, Susan wasn't great. Like you said, she was a bad mother. She did some bad scientific things. But she was never Cody. She was never PT. And Susan is still arguing for Cosima and trying to help Cosima. She also notices that PT is getting dialysis for his kidneys. And she is also horrified to see Virginia Cody, is back.
But friction makes fire. And that's sciencey.
But that's also, that does feel like a very culty, like, I feel like they've done the cult playbook with PT more than the mad scientist playbook.
I feel like you're right, yeah. I feel like we could have really gone down the mad scientist route, but we didn't.
And Cody then confronts Cosima. And
we've never met, but hi.
Yeah.
I also kept your sisters in a cage. How about that?
But here's the interesting thing in the episode. Ira. Because Ira makes a really good point when he sees that Cody's there, and he's a little excited about it. He wants to know where he came from. He kind of has the same questions that Kira has about himself. He wants to know about his brothers. He wants to know why he's the way he is. And I thought that was great. And at the same time, I like that he wanted to go talk to her for those reasons, but he was also going to go play double agent and talk to Cody and try to get information, because he's most loyal to his Susan.
Ugh.
I know you don't like it, but...
Ugh. Well, it doesn't matter. She's dead now. But yeah, seeing him, like, that like, conflicting emotions from him is really interesting, because obviously we know how much of a terrible person Cody is, and ultimately Cody's the one that gets Susan killed at the end of this episode.
Do you believe Cody when she said she was close to a cure? I know Susan doesn't, but Cody's right when she says Susan never tried to find your cure.
That's true.
Do you believe Cody?
I believe that if anybody wanted to find a cure for casters, for the caster issues, it was Cody, because she was basically their mother. And even though she did horrible things to, like, the clones that ended up glitching out, it was so that they could try to find a way to stop it. And, I mean, she was the closest thing they had to a mom, and I think they were the closest thing she had to children. So, at least in terms of that, I don't trust Cody as a person, but I feel like that bit of information is probably something she could have been trusted on.
Do you think there are other brothers still out there? Do you think there's other caster still out there, or do you think they've all like fallen? Do you think Mark is gone?
Outside of Mark, no, I don't think so. And even Mark, that's kind of a question mark.
Do you think they'd kill Mark off screen? I mean, he was a pretty major character for 2 seasons.
He got to drive off into the sunset with his lady love.
I wouldn't be surprised if, when we see Gracie next, because we are seeing Gracie again,
Ooh.
If she's come in the aftermath of Mark glitching and dying.
I could see it going both ways. I could see it being like he's close to the end, but he's still hanging on. But I could also very much see it just her being like, yeah, he's gone. And now that he's gone, I feel obligated to come and help his sister.
We also find out that PT, because he's a real monster, he's bleeding these children in a process called parabiosis. And he's basically taking their blood.
He is literally using the blood of the innocent to keep himself alive.
He wants to do anything just to stay alive. And this...
What is he sick with? Just being old?
He's just being old. I mean, his kidneys are failing. He's an old guy. Because, I mean... So...
But yeah, like I said, literally taking the blood of the innocent to keep himself alive. Like a monster.
So, things on the island escalate really quickly.
They really do. It falls apart
The
real quick.
people are very upset because of the guy whose name I don't even know, because you're right, the revival characters other than Mud were never that important.
Nope.
The guy who died last week, his wife is very upset, saying, like, we came here to be saved and we're getting killed. Then, Aisha dies. Which is sad. I mean,
that's upsetting.
That was sad, because she was adorable.
Mm-hmm.
And she was innocent. And they bled her, and they basically manipulated the genes to cover up the cancer, like to make it seem like, again, smoke and mirrors. PT was conning these people the whole time. And Aisha dies, and that's when Revival turns on PT. And it's very much like Frankenstein, because they even get the torches and you feel they're going to...
I was just missing a few pitchforks in that scene.
At the same time, Susan and Mud try to kill PT. They basically... they've recruited Mud, and Mud is, hooking up the dialysis. Susan's sticking something in there to, I guess, poison him and kill him. But then PT does again. Like, a good cult leader knows when you gotta, like, you punish, but then you gotta, like, welcome them back in.
You gotta give a little bit. Just a little bit.
He tells Mud she could take off the bell. All of a sudden, Mud now...
Forgive yourself, child.
She starts to feel bad for PT now at this moment. At the same time, Ira lets Cosima out of her cage, and I thought there was a lot of good tension here, because I was thinking, oh my god, Ira's gonna glitch out, and she's not gonna get out of that cage. But he does get her out, and he also gives her a key bit of evidence. It's a photo of PT back in 1962 with Susan, and clearly this is not a 170-year-old man. The other moment of real tension, I think a lot of the island stuff, because I was so worried about Cosima, built to a lot of tension. So, Cosima, before she leaves this island, and she plans to leave with Susan, Ira, and Charlotte, she goes to the trailer to get all her research, and of course the cure, because she's going to have to continue to take her medicine basically and give it to her sisters. And then idiot revival guy who's like, no, science, get this away from me.
Get this science stuff out. Like, we came here for science, not for science.
And he takes cure. And I was sitting on the edge of my seat because I was like, oh, F you, Orphan Black.
Yeah.
If
How
something,
dare you?
Dare
you?
If something happens to Cosima's cure, I was so nervous. But then she gives this heartfelt speech. And
she tells them the truth.
The truth about what's going on, and they give it to her, and that's when they really turn their attention up towards PT. Who, and like I said, it's like the last 10 minutes of this episode, everything went crazy. It was like comic relief, Krystal, then all...
And then everything's on fire.
Yeah, it was
It's
crazy.
the gif of Troy walking into the room and with pizza and everything's on fire.
Yeah. So, the other interesting thing is, as I'm talking about this, I said it felt like there was a lot of Cosima, but it was really only at the very end. It was really the Krystal show, and that was it for the clones. I haven't timed it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Susan and PT and even Cody and Ira had more time than most of the clones other than Krystal in this episode.
I mean, I feel like it's also heavily implied at the end of this episode that Ira's not going to make it to the next episode because he starts glitching out and he's bleeding from the nose. And when he comes across Susan's dead body, like, I really feel like, obviously, and of course Cosima has to leave because Charlotte's like, they're not coming, are they?
Yeah, I mean, you could only stay there for so long, and I think they figured out what's what, because they would have been there by now. And Cosima also has to think about her sisters. She has to think about Charlotte. I want to get to, let's wrap this whole thing up a little bit. PT basically is saved. Mud confesses. Cody kills Susan. Ira comes upon it. Like you said, his nose was bleeding. He's glitching.
Great editing with the glitching, by the way. I'd forgotten how well done that was.
And he finds Susan there. Obviously, this is heartbreaking for him. He's lost his mother lover. And
why do you say it that way?
Because it upsets you. So he starts really glitching. Now, so this is my big question. Do you think that's the end of Ira?
I hope not, but yeah, I do.
I asked the question earlier if you believe Cody's close to a cure. And I wonder if Cody is going to save Ira. If Cody is close to a cure and going to save Ira.
She's or like, at least, see, I told you I was close.
Or at least be able to stabilize him, slow the process down.
Again, if anybody can, it's her. Although I feel like that will eventually come back to bite her because she killed Susan.
Yeah. So that's that. Well, it would be great to see Cody really taken down by her own creation of Castor.
Yeah. I mean, it was one thing that it was really gratifying when she got put away. But yeah, actually, I mean, and there's something also very, as you said, like Frankenstein's monster, being the architect of your own destruction.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. I think that would be a very poignant end for her as well.
So my prediction is Ira is not dead, and Ira is going to be the one to ultimately take down Cody.
Fingers crossed.
That's my thought. The last bit of info we got to get to, and then we'll look at some of the questions, which I think we've probably covered most of them. But Rachel gets the order from PT because now PT needs Kira. He needs Lin 28A. In order to
proceed with the cloning.
And in order to find a way to extend his life.
Yeah, because he needs that healing cell regeneration stuff, yeah.
He needs this. So he basically, because this is all he cares about, he gives Rachel the mandate. I don't care that she's sick, you go get her. And Rachel does, and S lets her go, begrudgingly. But S says something interesting. She basically says, one day, Rachel, you're going to need us. And this line excited me because for years, I have been preaching that there will be a
Rachel redemption arc.
Yes. And I think this is the clue to that. That she's letting Rachel know that one day you're going to need your sestras. And you're part of this messed up family, whether you like it or not. And one day you're going to need us. And I think this is the hint that at some point Rachel's going to go against PT and side with the sestras.
Well, I mean, looking at it, Cody is, in my opinion, the real threat here at this point in time, because Susan's dead, Rachel's being led around by PT, and PT, honestly, not really a whole lot has to be done to take him down. That's just time. You just get him away from the things and the people that are keeping him alive, and time will take care of him for you. Cody is the one who she's the one that's so ruthless and all about, eugenics and straight up genocide in some cases, and she was I don't want to say problem because PT was totally rolling with whatever she wanted, but she was the more ruthless one out of the three of them. So in my opinion, she's the one that's going to have to be taken down, because PT, you could literally just step aside and a strong breeze will take him out. So yeah, I feel like Rachel's eventually going to come to the conclusion that she's going to need to team up with the Sestras to take down Cody, because Cody's the real threat that needs to be dealt with.
Does Rachel know the extent of what they want to do with Kira?
Well, and also, I don't think Rachel knows yet that Susan's been killed.
I don't think Rachel cares that Susan's been killed.
I don't know. I mean,
it's one thing to say you hate your mother. It's another thing when your mother actually dies.
Hey, if anyone was going to kill her, it should have been me. How dare you?
It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I wonder how far Rachel's willing to go experimenting on Kira, because, again, I've always said that I think Rachel does kind of have a little bit of a soft spot for her.
Mm-hmm. I love you brought up the code names earlier. I love that she designates Rachel as Elephant and herself as the Mouse. Because she's like, because elephants are scared of mice. And it's like, oh, Kira, that's so cute.
I'm happy we're kind of done with the island right now.
Thank God.
I think you had a bigger problem with me, but I feel like you needed
lost and clunky and stupid. Anyway,
I think you needed to move on from the island to get to kind of the meat of what the final endgame is, and I feel really excited about what's to come in these next few weeks. Because now it seems like we have to stop this crazy science experiment, we have to save Kira, and we have to heal the Sestras. And it's a little more streamlined. It's PT controlling Cody and Rachel, and Cody's clearly willing to go as far as PT wants her to. Will Rachel be? I want to just go over some of these quotes. I think we've covered a lot of them. A lot of them came from at How
do you spell that?
At MUMMUMMUMMAH.
Well done.
Who is always tweeting us some great questions, and he asked the Delphine met S last week. She should have told that Kira is in danger, extract her eggs, right? S wouldn't have sent Kira off. Delphine did, I believe, say...
She did. She told her what was going on and handed her a thumb drive of literally everything she had been working on.
And yet, though, S did let her...
Well, they couldn't very well pack up and go, otherwise they'd arouse suspicion.
I guess it was... I mean, they did try to stall them taking Kira.
Yeah.
So, I guess that's the best they could have done under the circumstances. I don't know if they know about the eggs, though. Do they know about the eggs harvesting? Because that's like a whole other...
That's a different game. Because, they know about the gene. But, I'm not sure if they know about that part yet.
Okay, some of these we answered already, so I'm not going to read them. But one, he does ask, what would happen once Rachel knows PT is a fake? And that's going to be interesting, too, because it's going to be fairly easy to prove at this point. I mean, Mud's got that photo. People know Revival is falling apart because of it. I think I don't know if Rachel will care.
I don't know, actually. She might already know because
She's savvy.
yeah, she's savvy, and also like she might also be purposely playing along because she might know that he's not as old as he says he is, but knows the value of the mask and of, the need to keep the act going, because when she was first brought on, she was able to address revival perfectly, like, and that's something I really thought we were going to explore a little bit more, but she took to it like a duck to water.
Yeah.
Like, so it would not surprise me in the least if she was in on the trick, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
He also says, why should Dyad buy cosmetics? Can't they just test on clones? I think they're going to test on everyone.
Yeah.
I think they're going to test on everyone, which is why Dyad has to be stopped. Like I said, I feel like we've gotten out of a little bit of the convoluted thing. We've wrapped up some storylines, and we're going to be a little more streamlined going forward. I feel like the very end game will be the save Kira, save the Sestras. And why doesn't Revival doesn't burn down PT's home?
I feel like that might be nice.
I feel like that might be maybe the budget. They didn't want to burn down a house. I don't know. Although they've burned down houses before. They burned down the Neolutions. Did you burn the fish people's house? Let's see. I know Nikki D. I think we were just commenting on things. I don't think she asked a question, but another person who I always love hearing your thoughts on the show. Well, ask the question that I feel like has been asked many times. Can Rachel truly ever be redeemed? I've said it before, I said it again. Maybe redeem is the wrong word, but I feel like she can make a sacrifice that at the end of the day, like, it's like, oh, she was a cold bitch, but she did the right thing in the end.
She did the right thing at this point in time. Like I said, finding out Susan's dead, or as we were also speculating, maybe finding out also that PT's a charlatan, might put her in like a you manipulated me, nobody manipulates me, and also you killed my mom. So yeah, I'm gonna help these ladies out.
Look, there was a lot going on in this episode. I definitely want to know what you guys, what the Clone Club thinks of this one.
Definitely.
Because there was a lot of information. Hopefully we got it out there to you in a way that made sense. It's funny,
More or less.
It's funny, I said last week I felt like I was just rambling to myself. This episode didn't help that. Thank God I had you for this one, because this was a crazy one.
Oops, sorry. I almost broke your chair.
So yeah, is there anything you want to add, or any thoughts for next week?
Just that it's nice to be back. It's always fun talking about this show. Yeah, it's great. It was great seeing Krystal. I can't the only other thing is I cannot believe there are only 4 episodes left. Man, this is really endgame.
You know, it's funny, as we said goodbye to some relatively minor characters this episode, and seeing Krystal and Sarah, just seeing Sarah in these moments, hanging out with Kira, which we've gotten a lot in the last couple episodes.
It's so great.
Just spending time with Cosima. This is a show that, maybe sometimes the plot in this episode in particular got convoluted, but I'm going to miss spending time with these characters.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss spending time with all the Sestras, and that's, I think, the big takeaway that I'm sure we will be talking about in 4 weeks from now when we say goodbye to all these characters. So Megan, one last thing I want to bring, just for fun. Bree and Scott, is there a future there?
I hope so. I hope she wasn't being facetious when she said she was into smart guys. I would like to see Scott get with a lady friend.
There you go. Because right now it's just him and his cat and the comic books.
He's a nice man who's been very helpful and supportive, and he deserves to be happy.
We're shipping Scott and Bree.
Yes, we are.
Megan, tell the people where they can find you.
You guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at TheMenguin. That's TheMenguin. I also do a bunch of shows at a network called AfterBuzz TV. I was down in Austin last week doing press coverage for the convention RTX. So a lot of our interviews are up on AfterBuzz's iTunes and YouTube web pages if you guys want to check those out. Highly encourage anybody who's like a big fan of Rooster Teeth's productions to go and check those out. It was a ton of fun. And I also do a YouTube channel called Silver Screams where my roommate and I talk about horror movies and stuff like that. It's usually a lot of fun, and usually I'm drinking whiskey. It's a hoot. And I also do the voice of Margot Lane on the Shadow Radio Recreation, so also be sure to check that out.
Your next, when you talk about horror movies next, will there be maybe some George Romero shout-outs?
I don't have anything on the docket right now, but now that he's sadly passed, R.I.P. George Romero, definitely.
This is why I want to see that. I'm giving you.
Well, one of the shows that we do is a show called Horror Q&A, which is I see a horror movie and Katie asks me questions about it because she's a wuss and doesn't like to. She'll only occasionally indulge in like shows like this one because this is great for everybody and it's wonderful and great and wonderful and hilarious. But so she'll ask me questions, and I usually, while drinking whiskey, will answer those questions. I did one for The Mummy. We did a special one at RTX, so that'll be going up probably the next couple days. And we did a special one with a few special guests. Ooh. So really excited for people to go and see that one. And I'm definitely going to be doing another one possibly later tonight, but nothing for George Romero at the moment. But I would absolutely love to do one. He was so phenomenal.
I think I just wanted to get us to talk about George Romero for a second in this because he was the best.
He was wonderful.
Invented the modern zombie genre.
Yeah.
And I would argue his Dawn of the Dead is still the best zombie film.
Better than Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead set a standard, but honestly, it was just a student film. Dawn of the Dead,
there's some interesting ideas and some really great makeup effects. And if you've never seen the original Dawn of the Dead from 1978, I think it is, go watch that movie.
Even both Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, they were horror movies that also had like really interesting social commentary. And he was basically the one that like inserted social commentary into the zombies genre. Because prior to that, it was just... I'm not going to say it was bad or anything like that, but it was basically just like, hey, we're going to tell this story about these guys. And this one really inserted some real social commentary, and it is what's made the genre so interesting. It's less about the zombies and more about, the humans that are left in the aftermath.
In between Orphan Blacks, watch some Romero. You can follow me on Twitter at The Real Will Link. You can listen to my podcast, Will Sean Podcast. I'm sure we'll be talking about Romero on that. We'll be talking about a lot of pop culture. This week we're going to have a jazz musician on.
Ooh!
We're going to ask him if Ryan Gosling was right when he said jazz is dying on the vine. We'll find out.
Because of people like you.
So until next week, Clone Club, I want to hear what you thought of this episode. Let's keep the conversation going in the YouTube comments. And we will see you next week.
Hopefully we get some Helena next time.